Malik Currington here, Family Budget Fisherman. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. I hope that you find it as exciting to watch as I did in making this video. And just to start off with, just a little bit of house cleaning. YouTube is constantly evolving and changing their algorithm and so forth. And they really appreciate videos that have shares, like liking and subscribing. And I'm gonna ask you on a personal level, I don't normally do that in the video, but I'm doing particularly for this one. If you enjoy the content, hit that like button. I personally noticed that there are a lot of you who watch the content. Last year, there were over 1,000 people who watched the Rod and Reel Arsenal, and I had less than half of the subscribers that I have now. I'm asking you this year to please like this video, hit that little thumb button. Also, if you're not a subscriber, I'm asking you tonight or today to be a subscriber to this channel, because I'm looking forward to being able to share this information with you on a regular basis. If you really enjoy this content, hit the bell notification so that you'll get this content as soon as I publish it. You'll know that there's content available to you. And for the record, I try to post these twice each week. Sometimes things happen where I'm not able to do it just as I would like to, but know that you will always get content from me as much as I'm able to produce it. So without further ado, let's get right into the video. I have with me 13 rods behind me, and they are ready to throw all of the bait and tackle that I have purchased. Like you, I went out and I took into account my family's budget, and I bought all the equipment I could possibly get during that particular time. And now I, like you, am now focused on breaking my personal best for 2021. And, you know, some fish, I like to eat fish. And in many cases, you know, I think we should go ahead on and eat some of this fish. So at any rate, without further ado, let's take a look at what it is, what the rod and reel selections are. Let's start off by mentioning, however, that all of my rods and reels are outfitted with Finesse braided line. Either the 215, meaning it's 2-pound test diameter, 15-pound test break strength, or 645, 6-pound test mono equivalent in diameter, and 45-pound test break strength. And I will either have it with a leader or without a leader. When I do have it with a leader, it'll be trilene 100% fluorocarbon, either the 15-pound test break strength or the 20-pound test break strength. So just so that you know, all of them are outfitted that way, no matter what I'm fishing for, and we won't have to take up so much of your valuable time talking about that in each one of these presentations. So the very first presentation is, standing right behind me here, is my new point guard in this. Last year, I called this whole selection the General Practitioners. This year, this is just the black rod sock collection, because almost all of these are outfitted with black rod socks. That to distinguish from my wife, hers is actually black and red. Hers is probably, you probably know this, is called the Black Widow collection. So, and she's not a widow, by the way. Lord, thank you. She's not a widow. So at any rate, this is the Phoenix M1, and this is the 2020 model. This is an update to the Phoenix M1 series that Phoenix has been producing for several years. I find it to be a fascinating update. They added a construction called Vortex construction and nanotubes. So my thinking is that this is a lighter and stronger rod than they have had in the past. And I think I've given a review of this that you could appreciate. I talked about the various aspects of this rod. Well, it now will be the point guard in my rod and reel arsenal for 2021. It is paired with Shimano's brand new Vanford is what it's called. And this is the C3000XG model that I have here. And I'll tell you this, I am loving this rod and reel combination. I'm just gonna tell you right up. This rod here with a 1/8 on the low end and 3/4 ounce on the high end in terms of the lure rating that this rod can handle is the widest variation of all of the rods that I will be throwing this year. And that's why it's the Point Guard, along with the fact that it's a 7'8" rather than a 7'6" or 7'4", 7'1", or 7'0", which is what most of my other rods are. This 7'8" really gives me advantages that the other rods just don't give me, whether it's in deep water, shallow water, close, or what have you. Now, this will primarily be my swim bait rod. And when I say swim baits, I'm not talking about the big, gigantic swim baits, the big 9-inchers and so forth. I'm talking about your Kitex, your 3-inch, 3.3 inch, maybe 3.8 inch, your Berkeley, the straight, the different kind of tails there. This is a 3-inch right here. Or your curly tails. And I think this is a 3 or 4 inch here. And that's because when I'm using this rod, and I'll pick this rod up every time I go fishing, this rod is going to help me find fish. It is going to, whatever the circumstances are, this rod will help me to find fish. I think that it's outfitted in such a way that it can help me do exactly that. And we're gonna spend a lot of time on the water with this rod and reel combination. I look forward to throwing this in this way. And I might even be putting together a twin, depending on how well this works by herself. I'll be putting together a twin for her. Next is my Daiwa Tatula Elite, and it is paired with the Daiwa Tatula LT reel. This is the 3000 size. Once again, I've done reviews on each one of these items here, and the pairing represents a bit of a wardrobe remodel, or a re-wardrobing. Is that a good phrase? Re-wardrobing? Yeah, redressing, remodeling. Because at first, throughout 2020, this rod was paired with the 13 Fishing's GT 3000 and the Creed. It's called the Creed GT 3000. It was outfitted with that, and I've chosen to make the change because I bought a couple of these Tatula LTs, and I think that it is a better pairing for this rod. This is a 7'4". As I mentioned to you in the past, it's a 7'4" length. This is a medium, called a medium, light medium. And this will be a search rod just the same. And it will be throwing primarily my Ned type baits. So, the typical Ned, of course, that's a Berkeley mushroom head that competes with Z-Man's version. And that's simply because I like their weight sizes, 1/16, 1/8, that kind of thing. I don't like those 1/5, 1/6, I don't like that. So that's why I stick with those numbers there. And then, of course, you have the Chigger Crawl, the 3-inch Chigger Crawl, and that is actually, it's Texas rigged with a ball head. This is a Gamakatsu jig head here. It's flanked with that. And also owner's version, this right here. This actually, and I'm gonna make mention of this later on in a different video, but this might actually replace my darter heads because of the way this is set up, and it's also weedless. It may actually replace my darter heads. But so this will be throwing my Ned type baits and also my Nico style baits. Everybody kind of has an idea of what the Nico style baits are. It would be, for example, if I were to throw this wacky rig with a nail weight in it, it will be those type of baits that I'll be throwing. So just so that you know, here we got the Daiwa Tatula Elite paired with the Daiwa Tatula LT, and it will be throwing my Nico or my Ned baits primarily, and on occasion it'll be throwing some Nico baits. Next up is the Daiwa Tatula cork handle. The Daiwa Tatula cork handle, and it's a split cork handle. Again, I've done a review online. Take a look at some of the videos in the past and you'll be able to see it. It has a leader on it. This rod will be primarily throwing my worms. This is my worm rod. This is a medium light, medium light, medium, just the same. 7'6", and it will be throwing my wackies. You can see my wackies here. It'll be throwing Texas style baits, and this is of course a finesse worm with an owner hook. And I just mentioned that it may be replacing my darter heads and this is one of the reasons why. Here's another one. It's a curly tail style. Okay. This is paired with the Revo X30 reel. This is a great reel, I have to tell you. Abu Garcia, y'all did y'all work with this one right here. I have to give it to them for a $100 reel, $110 reel, depending on where you purchase it. They put in some good technology into that reel. And so this right here will be taking care of my worms. This will also be sharing some Nico responsibilities. It just depends on how intense whatever's going on with the water at that particular time. So there we have it. Next. Oh, also, I have to mention that this rod will also be throwing any tube baits that are over 4 inches and higher. So for example, this will come up again when it comes to the punching. So for example, this is a 4-inch tube. So I will probably put this on here if I don't put it on the Elite model. I'll be throwing that, or even bigger. So this is a 5-incher right here that I normally like to pitch, flip, and punch with. And so I might put it on there when it comes to shallow, open water. My next one is my Shimano. This is my Shimano Zodius rod. This is not the most recent model. This is the model previous to the new one that's out right now. And it is paired with the Creed GT3000 spinning reel made by 13 Fishing. And what I love about it is, look at that, the colors on there. So 13 Fishing has the red and black, and Zodius is red and black. I thought that was pretty interesting, that coincidental color pairing. This is a 7-foot rod. This is I think I want to say it's 3/16 to 1/2. This will be my, it will serve two purposes primarily. This will be my short tubes. So if I'm throwing tubes like this salty tube right here, or I got my Z-Man with a Berkeley mushroom head, or I'm throwing one of my crappie style 2.5-inch tubes that you can also go, fish for bass, of course. So if I'm throwing those, this will be the ticket right here. Now, this will also at times be my crappie, that also serve as my crappie rod. And this will be my crappie rod when I want to get into bushes, when I want to fish straight down into bushes. Where I like to fish here in the Northern California area, we have a lot of back sloughs. And these back sloughs are sometimes no deeper than 13 or 15 feet deep. And along the sides, you got heavy cover that comes out of the water. Well, sometimes I want to get down and dirty with something like this, Texas rig one of the either tube bait or a crappie bait, Texas rig it, send it down there into the bushes and pull out some of those big old crappie. Sometimes some big catfish lurking around there and other fish. So that's what this will serve with. That's why it does not have a leader on it. Now, having said that, just the same, if opportunity permits, I might even throw, a topwater bait on it. It just depends on how I'm feeling at that particular day. But its primary purpose will be to throw those tubes in. It'll always have a tube on it to begin my day. Next is the Shimano Corrado. Now the Shimano Corrado, its primary mission, it's a 7'4". You've seen me bring this up before. It's a 7'4" medium action rod, and it is also paired with, the Revo X30 spinning reel. And this will be my primary drop shot rod. Primary for drop shot. Now it's interesting, I don't do a lot of drop shotting. A lot of people would suspect that, as a bass fisherman, drop shotting is something that is integral to the arsenal. Well, for those of us who are multi-species fishermen, particularly if we're fishing for crappie, we've learned how to adjust our line in such a way that we don't need that extra weight at the bottom so much. We know how to pull out the line, throw it out there, and let it fall to a certain depth. And it really is a matter, and I'm just gonna tell you this about drop shotting. It's a matter of throwing it out, letting it hit the bottom, and raising your rod up certain numbers of inches until you get it to where you want it. Will it swing towards you? Yes, but that's simply because most fish like to see a bait moving. Now I know with drop shotting, one of the good purposes of drop shotting is to have that weight sitting down and you just kind of flickering it in place. While that is an advantage unto itself, it doesn't represent the sum total, especially if you got a school of fish. You really don't need to do that much work with it. But having said that, this will serve as my drop shot in the event that I'm going to need to do drop shotting. And it will also secondarily serve as a crappie rod as well. Sometimes I like to outfit one crappie rod with an 8-ounce jig or tube or what have you, and another one with a 16th. And so you'll see the paddle tails. So you'll see the straight tails like that, or even curly tails with jig spinners. Okay, another form of spinner bait. Or you'll even see little sweet beaver imitation there. There's a little tiny sweet beaver up in there. Interesting, isn't it? I got several colors of these. I got them in yellow, I got them in black, and of course in the white. So that's what this would serve as. Primarily drop shot, secondarily as a crappie bait. And see, it has a nice long 15-pound leader, complete with a snap in it. And I suspect, like in times past with other rods, that I'll have a great time with that rod. Moving right along is, I'm going into, now all of those rods are my medium rods. I'm moving now into my medium heavies. I think I have one more. Yeah, I got one more medium. Let's see, which one is it? Is it this one? Yep, this one. This is a 7'1" medium. After this, the other three are medium heavies. So this is a 7'1" medium. This will primarily be for my jerkbaits and small topwater as well. Like I told you, Shimano, I may throw some Shimanos, some topwater with the Shimano because it doesn't have a leader, but my go-to will be this. So I might be throwing my torpedoes. Okay, and I love throwing torpedoes. I love catching big bass on torpedoes. Trust me when I'm telling you. This is an old school bait that still does a lot of wreckage on the water when you throw it. Or popper style baits, okay? Or when it goes to jerk baits, I kind of like these rip stops. As you can see, that rip stop has that little lip down there. This rip stop has been pretty good for me in the last couple years or so. I haven't done a review on it, but I might need to. It's a great bait. This is a new Rapala ripstop bait, or even some of the soft jerks. I'll have this outfitted with some soft jerks because times will permit it from time to time. So you'll see that outfitted there. So this medium will primarily be for that, or it will serve another occasion. You know, it's like the military. You know, when you get out into the theater of combat, things change. You know, you have to make modifications, etc. But its primary job is to be flanked with a topwater bait, and then secondarily with a jerkbait. Okay? All right. So next is my medium heavy combos. My medium heavies, starting with my Envy. Okay? This is 13 Fishing's Envy, and I love throwing this rod. I'm just gonna tell you, I love throwing this rod. I've been throwing it for about 1.5 years now, and I love throwing this rod, period. I might actually even get another one just because of the joy of throwing this rod. On my major rods, I usually have 2. So like my Phoenix, I got 2. My Tatula, I have 2. My Tatula Elite rather, I have 2 of those. My Shimano Zodius rods, I actually got 4 of those, but there's a special circumstance as to why I ended up with 4 of those rather than 2 of those. Having said that, this is the only one I don't have more than one of, and I may end up getting another one of these. They're a little expensive. They're $325 a rod, but Dick's Sporting Goods has been good to me in terms of finding a good deal, so that might happen. Having said that, this is paired with 13 Fishing's Creed GT3000 spinning reel, and I've got the 645-pound test brake strength fins, 645-pound braid on there. And by the way, I may as well say it up front, and I'll say it again in a video that's coming up pretty soon. I don't have use so much of the high brake strength so that, you know, I need that kind of brake strength. I have it there because sometimes, like everybody, I don't care how good you tie a knot, one day you're going to tie one of your knots and the brake strength is going to be about half of whatever it is your line is. So in my case, if I'm tying my knots and by the way, no knot is stronger than the line, none. The line is always stronger than the knot. So if I'm tying a knot and my knot compromises 20%, well, I'm still in the high 30s or in the mid 30s in terms of my brake strength. While a lot of people will have have line that's 30-pound test brake, they compromise at 20% and they're down in the low 20s. I'm still in the mid 30s on mine. So that's the reason why I do that. But I'll talk about that a lot later in another video. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, this is my bladed bait rod. So when I talk about bladed baits, I'm talking about throwing my chatterbaits, okay? I'm talking about throwing my spinner baits, and yes, I do use a leader on my spinner baits. You know, I know there's a lot of controversy. I need to add a trailer because I've never really thrown trailers on my spinner baits. I know there's a lot of controversy over whether or not a person should have a stinger hook on it or not. I use trailer hooks or stinger hooks on all of my spinner baits. Here's another one, the underspin. This is VMC's version of the underspin. So the way that I work it out is, the first thing I do, because I have a preference, I always put a spinner bait on first. If I'm just loading up and getting in the truck and leaving out, spinner bait's always going to be the primary bait on this rod. If conditions look like they demand something different, meaning there's a lot of heavy cover, I'm going to change from a spinner bait to a chatterbait. And then if I don't get bit on the chatterbait, I'm putting the underspin. That's how I usually decide what bladed bait I'm going to put on that particular outing. So that is my bladed baits rod. The next one is the 13 Fishing. This is my 13. What is that? Oh, okay. This next one is gonna be my crankbait rod when I'm throwing crankbaits that are under 10 feet. Now, this is and I'm gonna say this again later on, this is a medium heavy power, and this is a graphite rod. I have another one that's a graphite, in my specialty rods is a graphite composite, but I'm gonna be throwing, so for example, my square bills, the big ones and the small ones. This happens to be a larger one that I've thrown recently. And then some that get close to 8 feet. And then rattle traps, the smaller ones. So whenever I want to throw something that is a diving bait or a bait, you know, some sort of a reaction bait like a crankbait or a or rattle trap or lipless bait or some form, that reaction bait, this will be the rod that I will start with. This is 13 Fishing's Omen, medium heavy. The twin was a medium, but this is a medium heavy, 7'1". The lure rating is a 3/8 ounce to 3/4 ounce, so that fits. You know, these lures should be able to handle it. And then I also have 13 Fishing's Creed GT 3000 on that rod. And I think I'm gonna have a lot of fun with this particular rod as a dedicated reaction or crankbait rod. Now, as times might permit, I might throw a spinnerbait on there and have a chatterbait on one rod and a spinnerbait on another, or underspin and so forth. Just depends on how I feel. Sometimes I might even pitch a flip with it because they're universal. But I'll start off with what I shared with you, some sort of crankbait or reaction bait. This is the predecessor to the Omen 3s, the one that I just showed you, and then the medium version. This is the Omen 2 right here. And the Omen 2 is paired with this is the Fluger Summit XT. Both of these rod and reel are discontinued. So if I'm ever going to make a change out of my rod and reel arsenal with another medium heavy, it'll probably be this one. This one probably will be moved on to doing ponds and so forth. But for right now, this is still in the Black Rod Sock collection. And it is, I mean, it's a beast. I mean, I've caught some nice 10-pounders with its twin. I broke a rod tip last year catching a 10-pound. First I catch a 10-pound catfish, and I'm throwing, basically, I'll show you the similar thing that I was throwing. I was throwing crawdad style baits into a pipe that was coming out of a slough, and I was throwing for bass, and I caught a hold of first a small catfish, and then I caught a big 10-pound catfish. Then after that, I caught a 10-pound carp, all in the mouth. So, and I have some pictures on, I think they're on Instagram, so you'll be able to see those. It was quite an interesting day that day, and because I had to drag them up the side of a levee. I was fishing from the bank. But that's what this will primarily be for my shallow diving, any crankbait that's under 10 feet. I think that's, yeah, any crankbait that's under 10 feet. I'm looking at some notes that I have down here just to make sure that I get everything in. So please, I apologize if I'm bending down, trying to look at the screen, the iPad down there. The next thing is my specialty rods. I have 4 specialty rods. By coincidence, they all happen to be the ugly sticks. And you've seen them all in rod and reel arsenals that I've had in the past, but they now have a relegation to specialty circumstances. So for example, this one right here is, now I just showed you the Omen 2, which is a crankbait rod that I'm using for crankbaits that are diving under 10 feet. This one will be relegated to crankbaits that are over 10 feet. So if I'm throwing some of the big, deeper divers, the ones that are going 15 feet and 20 feet, the big lifts there, or if I'm throwing lipless, 1/2 ounce and 3/4 ounce rattle traps, or even if I'm throwing the Zara spooks. This is the big big homie to the torpedoes. So big baits like that, or even the bigger jerk baits and so forth, I'm going to be using this right here for that. And the main reason is because this is a composite glass. This Ugly Stick Elite, okay, is a composite glass and graphite rod. Interestingly enough, I listened to Kevin Van Dam with the new selection of rods that he has now with Lew's. He said that he likes a combo rod better than he likes 100% glass rod. Now, of course, he's throwing his signature brand, and I'm throwing the Ugly Stick. And the rods are about as heavy as the, one or another. And of course, I got the long handle here, so I can really chuck that lure way out. It is paired with the old Daiwa 2500 XIA spinning reel, and it is the speed on this reel is 6.3 to 1. Now, I forgot to mention to all of them except for one reel here is a 6.2 to 1. I think the Shimano Vanford is a 6.4 to 1. At least the model that I have is a 6.4 to 1, but all of the others are 6.2 to 1 in terms of their gear ratio. But this is a 5.3 to 1, and the reason why I needed something slower is because when I'm bringing it in, I don't want to bring it in so fast, but I want to get the depth. So that's the reason why I have that. And in one of my future videos, I'll explain to you how I can get deep down with a braided line, with fluorocarbon and a snap, just the same. Also, I have the saltwater version of that. That's a 7'6" Ugly Stick right there. This is a 7'6" as well, but this is a saltwater. This is a Ugly Stick Elite. It has the same spinning reel as the other one there, the Daiwa 2500, Daiwa Regal 2500 XIA. And I use this primarily for pitching and flipping. So if I'm pitching some of the, the bigger baits here, some of the bigger baits here, this will be the rod that I am going to be using. Because number one, pitching and flipping is something, when it comes to bigger baits, it's a specialty. I have to tip my hat to those of you who throw bait casters, because you can get a lot heavier than those of us with spinning equipment can. I tend not to have to need more than a 1/2 ounce to get through some of the heaviest mats that I can get through to get some of those bass and winch them right out of there. But there are those of you, and if you know anything about Ugly Sticks, one of the things that we know is that it's hard to break them. They do break, but it's very difficult to break them by comparison. And I can get bass out of some of the thickest cover with these, but I don't need that all the time. So that's why this is a specialty rod rather than something that's featured on a regular basis. Also, if I'm going to be throwing some of my bigger stick baits, I'm going in this direction. Or if I'm going to be throwing some of my bigger, like this is a 9-inch worm, Texas rig, pre-rigged, I'm going in that direction. So, that's what this is for, okay? Now, last but not least, no, I got 2 more to go. So this one right here, this is my frog rod. Now this is a discontinued model to the model that I just shared with you. This is a split auger handle. It has the same reel, the Daiwa Regal 2500 XIA. And this is a 7-foot model, whether that one was a 7.6. This is a 7-foot model. I think I got 3 of these still. And this is a saltwater rod. Now, by the way, I should have mentioned to you, the reason why I do saltwater rods, because even though that's a medium, both of those rods are mediums. A medium saltwater rod tends to be a stiffer rod than a medium freshwater rod. And the same goes for, actually it just goes for almost all their rods. So this, using this as a frog rod, I have the dexterity of a freshwater rod, but it is an inshore, because both of them, they're called inshore selects. So as you can see there, that's an inshore select right there. And then, of course, I should have showed you this already, but there you go, inshore select. So this is discontinued in favor of this model here. So when I'm not throwing a frog though, I'm throwing some of my heavier jigs. They're gonna be outfitted with this, whether it's the swim jig or the pitching and flipping jig. And the main reason why is because in my fishing experience, I don't throw these all the time. I know that I probably should if I'm going exclusively for bass, but I don't throw them all the time. So so they have a special circumstance with me. And trust me, I think I've already proven to you by showing you some pictures that I can put up some big bass without having to go big bass baits all the time. Last but not least, rounding up the 13 rods is my 12-foot crappie hunter made by Shakespeare. It is outfitted with Akuma's Stratus 25. This is a 25 series, and this is a 12-foot two-piece, 12-foot rod. For obvious reasons, it's a two-piece. I only use this when I'm fishing for fish. The heaviest fish that I've caught on this so far is about a 3-pound crappie, but I'm sure I can haul in some 3-pound bass with this as well. I don't bow flip them, but I can get them in. This, of course, has the 15-pound test, the 215 of fins. At the time I first started, before I started buying the big spools, when I was buying the small spools, I liked the green at the time because it looked to me so much like Slick 8, which is where I graduated from, and that's the reason why I have it. But now I have this, and when I want to reach out over and dropping straight down is a better thing for me than for me to cast and retrieve. That's where this puppy comes in when I'm multi-species fishing. Now, having said that, this also doubles as my float and fly rod. Hopefully some of you have seen my video talking about crappie rigs. The float and fly, I've said enough about the float and fly, but this will be my float and fly rod when I need to employ that technique. As I mentioned, some of these techniques you don't have to employ all the time. Some of them, because of some of the new technologies that we have, are going to be discontinued. My argument, for example, with the drop shot, I doubt very seriously if the drop shot is going to get a whole lot of fanfare when you can literally watch how deep a fish is and you just drop the lure down there. You don't need to drop it down there with a weight below it. You just drop the lure, the jig down there on its own. So that's one example that I'm sharing with you that may be less used in the future, just simply because technology has given us innovation where some of these techniques aren't necessary like they used to be. Crankbaiting is going to be relegated at some point because you don't have to cover a lot of water with baits anymore. You got the technology on your boat to find fish and get right on top of them. So I want to thank you all for bearing with me as I share with you my rod and reel arsenal for 2021. And my goal, my singular focus, is to update some of those pictures that I've shown you in the introduction. It's just, they gotta be updated. And I hope some of yours are much more recent than mine are. And I look forward to hearing from you in the comments below. Let me know what you think. Tell me about your personal best. Tell me about some of your rod and reel combinations that you have. I look forward to hearing from you all. Thank you, thank you, thank you for endeavoring and embarking on this journey with me through this medium. And I ask you again to please like, share, subscribe to this channel, do whatever YouTube wants algorithmic wise in order to get the word out that, hey, we're in here to do two things. Number one, pursue our personal best, but most importantly, to do that without breaking our family's budget. I'll see you next time. Have a great time out on the water. Take care.